The champagne glass nearly slipped from Lucas Osborne's fingers as the cruise ship lurched forward, beginning its journey across the sparkling blue waters of the Mediterranean. He steadied himself against the railing of his private balcony suite, exhaling slowly as he watched the shoreline of Barcelona gradually shrink in the distance. For the first time in months, he felt the tight knot in his chest begin to loosen. No board meetings, no shareholders. No endless stream of emails demanding his immediate attention. For the next 14 days, billionaire tech mogul Lucas Osborne was officially off the grid. At 35, Lucas had built Osborne Connect from a dorm room startup to a global tech empire worth over $20 billion. The past year had been particularly brutal: a failed merger attempt, a high-profile lawsuit from a rival company, and the unexpected death of his mentor and friend had left him exhausted and emotionally drained. When his executive assistant suggested a vacation, he'd initially dismissed the idea. But after nearly collapsing from exhaustion during a board meeting, even Lucas had to admit he needed a break. "Mr. Osborne, will there be anything else?" The personal butler assigned to his suite stood at attention in the doorway. "No, thank you. I'd appreciate not being disturbed for the rest of the evening." Lucas didn't turn around, keeping his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Of course, sir. May I just remind you that there is a welcome reception in the grand ballroom at 8 o'clock. As a premium suite guest, your attendance is not happening," Lucas interrupted, finally turning to face the butler. "I'm here to relax, not socialize." The butler nodded politely and departed. Lucas returned his gaze to the sea, sipping his champagne. He'd chosen this particular cruise line for its reputation for luxury and discretion. The Royal Atlantic's Sovereign Suite had cost him a small fortune, but it guaranteed privacy, exclusive amenities, and minimal interaction with other passengers. Perfect for someone who wanted to disappear for a while. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, Lucas felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness wash over him. He was free, but also completely alone, just how he wanted it, or so he told himself. To 2 weeks of absolute nothing, he toasted the empty air, finishing his champagne in one swallow. The first 3 days of the cruise passed in a blur of sleep, room service, and solitude. Lucas had ventured out only for brief walks around the upper deck during odd hours when few passengers were around. He'd brought a stack of novels he'd been meaning to read for years, but found himself unable to focus on the words for long. Instead, he spent hours watching the waves from his balcony, letting his mind wander for the first time in years. On the morning of the 4th day, as the ship docked in Naples, Lucas decided it was time to at least pretend to be on vacation. He'd skip the crowded excursions, but perhaps a visit to the ship's much-lauded spa wouldn't be terrible. After all, he was paying a premium for these amenities. The spa was less crowded than he expected, with only a few other guests lounging in plush robes. Lucas checked in at the reception desk, keeping his sunglasses on despite being indoors. "Mr. Osborne, welcome to the Celestial Spa," said the receptionist, discreetly checking her computer. "I see you've booked our premium relaxation package. Your massage therapist will be with you shortly." Lucas nodded and moved to a secluded corner of the waiting room. He picked up a magazine about luxury travel, flipping through it without really seeing the pages. His mind was already drifting back to work problems when a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Lucas looked up to find a woman standing before him, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. She was holding a steaming cup of herbal tea and wearing the spa's white robe, her wet hair pulled back from her face. "It's all yours," he replied, shifting slightly to make room. "Thanks." She settled into the chair with a contented sigh. "First real vacation in 3 years, and I think I might spend the entire cruise right here in this spa." Lucas gave a noncommittal nod, hoping to discourage further conversation. He returned his attention to the magazine, but couldn't help noticing her from the corner of his eye. She was probably around 30, with an open, expressive face and a natural ease about her that suggested she wasn't intimidated by much. "I'm Claire, by the way, Claire Sullivan." She extended her hand. Lucas hesitated before accepting the handshake. "Lucas, just Lucas?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. "For now." He offered a tight smile. Claire laughed. "Mysterious, I like it." She took a sip of her tea. "Let me guess you're hiding from someone, ex-wife." Demanding boss, the paparazzi. Lucas stiffened. "I'm not hiding, I'm relaxing." "With your sunglasses on indoors, while hunched over like you're trying to disappear into that chair." She shook her head. "That's not relaxing, that's hiding." Before Lucas could respond, a spa attendant appeared. "Miss Sullivan, your facial is ready." Claire stood, gathering her belongings. "Well, just Lucas, if you ever decide to actually enjoy this cruise instead of hiding from it, I'm in stateroom 714. She smiled warmly. Sometimes talking to a stranger is easier than talking to someone who thinks they know you. With that, she followed the attendant down the hallway, leaving Lucas slightly stunned by the encounter. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to him so directly, without the filter of deference his wealth and status usually inspired. It was refreshing. "Mr. Osborne, we're ready for you now." Another attendant appeared, clipboard in hand. Lucas followed, still thinking about the woman's words. Was he hiding? Maybe. But after years in the spotlight, hiding felt like a luxury he'd earned. The massage was excellent, but Lucas found his thoughts repeatedly returning to Claire Sullivan. There was something about her directness that had cut through his carefully constructed walls. By the time he returned to his suite, he'd convinced himself to forget the encounter. Naples was visible from his window, historic and inviting, but Lucas ordered room service instead of venturing into the city. The next morning, the ship was at sea again, headed for Sicily. Lucas woke early, a habit from years of pre-dawn business calls, and decided to use the ship's gym before it became crowded. He was halfway through his run on the treadmill when someone took the machine next to his. He glanced over and nearly stumbled. "Morning, just Lucas," Claire said with a grin, adjusting the settings on her treadmill. "Fancy meeting you here." Lucas slowed his pace slightly. "You know, most people would take the hint that I prefer to be alone." "Most people aren't very interesting," she replied easily, starting a brisk walk. "Besides, you looked lonely." "I looked lonely." Lucas couldn't hide his surprise. "I'm literally trying to avoid human contact," Claire laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to brighten the room. "There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Trust me, I'm something of an expert." Despite himself, Lucas was curious. "An expert on loneliness? That seems like a depressing specialty." "I'm a travel writer," she explained, increasing her speed. "I spend most of my life in beautiful places surrounded by strangers. You learn to recognize the look." Lucas returned his attention to his own workout, unsure how to respond. After a few minutes of silence, Claire spoke again. "So, what are you running from, just Lucas?" "And don't say nothing, because nobody pays for a luxury cruise just to hide in their room unless they're running from something." Lucas considered ignoring the question but found himself answering instead. "Work, responsibility, expectations, take your pick." "Ah," Claire nodded. "The holy trinity of modern stress. What kind of work makes you want to disappear completely?" Lucas hesitated. The moment he mentioned Osborne Connect, the conversation would change. It always did. People either wanted something from him or treated him differently once they knew who he was. "Tech industry," he said simply. "Interesting." Claire wiped her forehead with a small towel. "Silicon Valley type, something like that." "Well, Mr. Silicon Valley, I'm heading to the breakfast buffet after this. Care to join me?" "I promise not to ask about your stock options or whatever it is tech people talk about." Lucas should have said no. He'd planned this trip specifically to avoid social interaction, but something about Claire Sullivan made him want to break his own rules. "I suppose breakfast wouldn't be terrible," he found himself saying. Claire's smile was triumphant. "Great, I'll meet you by the exit in 20 minutes. The breakfast buffet was busy, but they found a quiet table near a window overlooking the sea. Claire piled her plate with fruit, pastries, and smoked salmon, while Lucas opted for a simple omelet and coffee. "So, tell me something real about yourself that doesn't involve your mysterious tech job," Claire said between bites of a croissant. Lucas considered the question. "I collect vintage vinyl records." "Really?" Claire looked genuinely interested. "What kind of music?" "Jazz mostly, some classic rock. I find the imperfections in the sound comforting." "I can see that," Claire nodded. In a world of digital perfection, there's something authentic about those pops and crackles. For the next hour, they talked about music, books, and travel. Lucas found himself relaxing, sharing opinions and experiences he rarely discussed with anyone. Claire was well-read and had traveled extensively for her work, but what struck him most was her enthusiasm for the world around her. "You really love your job, don't you?" he asked as they finished their coffee. "I love the freedom it gives me," she replied. "I get to see the world and share those experiences with people who might never get the chance to travel themselves." She tilted her head, studying him. "Do you love what you do?" The question hit harder than he expected. "I used to," Lucas admitted. "When it was about creating something new, solving problems. But now it's mostly about managing expectations and protecting what I've built." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Lucas surprised himself with his candor. "That's why I'm here. I needed to remember what it feels like to just be a person, not a position." Claire nodded slowly. "Well, just Lucas, what would that person like to do today? The ship has a rock-climbing wall, 3 swimming pools, a movie theater, art classes." Lucas hadn't planned to do any of those things, but looking at Claire's expectant face, he found himself considering the possibilities. "What would you recommend?" "There's a wine tasting at 3. We're sailing past some of the best wine regions in the world, after all." "Wine tasting," Lucas repeated, imagining a crowded room full of cruise passengers taking selfies. "Is it usually very busy?" Claire seemed to understand his concern. "It's in one of the smaller venues, limited space, and today's theme is premium Italian reds, so it attracts a more subdued crowd." Lucas found himself nodding. "All right, Miss Sullivan, wine tasting it is." "Great," Claire stood, gathering her dishes. "I'm going to explore the ship a bit more this morning. Meet you at the Grand Crew Lounge at 3. "I'll be there," Lucas promised, watching as she walked away. For the first time since boarding the ship, he was actually looking forward to something. The wine tasting was an intimate affair, with only about 20 passengers gathered in an elegant lounge decorated to resemble an Italian wine cellar. Lucas arrived a few minutes early, securing a table at the back of the room. When Claire appeared, wearing a simple blue dress that complemented her eyes, Lucas felt an unexpected flutter in his chest. "You clean up nice, Silicon Valley," she said, sliding into the seat beside him. "I half expected you to cancel." "I considered it," Lucas admitted with a small smile, "but I do enjoy good wine." The sommelier began the tasting with a brief history of Italian winemaking, followed by the first pour, a rich Barolo from Piedmont. As they sampled each wine, Lucas and Claire discussed the flavors and aromas, their conversation flowing as easily as the wine. "So, what made you become a travel writer?" Lucas asked as they tasted a robust Brunello di Montalcino. Claire swirled the wine in her glass before answering. "My parents never traveled. They lived their entire lives in a small town in Ohio, never even saw the ocean." She took a sip of wine. "When I was 12, my aunt took me to New York City for a weekend, and it was like discovering a whole new world existed. I promised myself I'd see everything I could while I could, and writing about it, that part was accidental. I started a blog during a backpacking trip through Europe after college. It gained a following, and eventually, travel magazines started offering me assignments." She shrugged. "I was lucky." "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity," Lucas quoted. "You must be good at what you do." "I'm passionate about it," Claire corrected. "That's different from being good, but it seems to work for me." She turned the question back to him. "What about you?" How did you end up in tech? Lucas hesitated, then decided on a version of the truth. I built something that solved a problem I was having. Turns out other people were having the same problem. And now it's much bigger than I ever imagined, which is good but also complicated. Claire nodded thoughtfully. Success has a way of changing things, doesn't it? Sometimes I miss those early days of just writing for the joy of it, before deadlines and editors and audience expectations. Exactly, Lucas said, surprised by how perfectly she'd captured his own feelings. The bigger something gets, the less control you seem to have over it. The wine tasting concluded with a special dessert wine paired with Italian chocolates. As they left the lounge, slightly tipsy and laughing about the sommelier's elaborate descriptions, Lucas realized he was genuinely enjoying himself. The constant pressure that had become his normal state of being had lifted, if only temporarily. What now? Claire asked as they strolled along the promenade deck, the late afternoon sun casting a golden light across the sea. The night is young, and we're on one of the most luxurious cruise ships in the world. Lucas considered his options. The old Lucas would have retreated to his suite, ordered room service and caught up on work emails. But something had shifted. There's a jazz ensemble playing in the Starlight Lounge tonight, he suggested. Given my record collection, it might be interesting. Claire's face lit up. I'd love that. Shall we have dinner first? I heard the Mediterranean restaurant on board is excellent. Dinner and jazz it is, Lucas agreed, surprising himself with his enthusiasm. The Mediterranean restaurant was elegant without being stuffy, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the sunset over the sea. Lucas found himself relaxing as they shared plates of seafood paella, grilled vegetables, and fresh bread dipped in olive oil. Claire was easy to talk to, asking thoughtful questions and sharing entertaining stories from her travels. So, you've really never been recognized on this cruise? Claire asked as they finished their meal. No one has approached you for whatever it is people usually want from you. Lucas hesitated. How did you please? Claire rolled her eyes. You practically jump whenever someone looks at you too long. Plus, you've been very careful not to mention specifics about your work. It doesn't take a genius to figure out you're someone who's used to being recognized. I prefer my privacy, Lucas said carefully. Fair enough. Your secret is safe with me, just Lucas, whatever it is. She raised her glass in a mock toast, to anonymity on the high seas. Lucas clinked his glass against hers, feeling a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Part of him wanted to tell her the truth, to see if her reaction to him would change. But the larger part was enjoying this rare opportunity to connect with someone who seemed to like him for himself, not his wealth or status. The Starlight Lounge was intimate and dimly lit, with small tables arranged around a central stage where a quartet was playing classic jazz standards. Lucas and Claire found a table near the back, where they could see the stage but remain somewhat secluded. As the music played, Lucas found himself watching Claire more than the musicians. She swayed slightly to the rhythm, her eyes closed during a particularly soulful saxophone solo. When she caught him looking, she didn't look away. What? She asked softly. Nothing, Lucas shook his head. It's just nice to see someone so present in the moment. That's the secret to good travel writing, Claire replied. You have to really be there, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. Otherwise, you're just reporting facts that anyone could Google. Is that why you're on this cruise? For work? Claire hesitated. Partially. I'm doing a piece on luxury cruises for a travel magazine, but I also just needed a break. My last relationship ended badly, and I thought some time at sea might help clear my head. I'm sorry to hear that, Lucas said sincerely. Don't be, he was perfectly nice, just perfectly wrong for me, she smiled ruefully. He wanted me to settle down, take fewer assignments, basically become someone else. That seems unfair. Your work is clearly important to you. It is. But I understand where he was coming from. It's hard to build a life with someone who's gone half the year. She sipped her drink. What about you? Is there a Mrs. Silicon Valley wondering where you've disappeared to? Lucas shook his head. No. There was someone a few years ago, but it didn't work out. Let me guess, she couldn't handle your devotion to your mysterious tech empire? Something like that, Lucas admitted. She said I was married to my company. She wasn't wrong. The conversation paused as the band began a rendition of Fly Me to the Moon. Claire's face lit up. I love this song. Without thinking, Lucas extended his hand. Would you like to dance? Claire looked surprised but pleased. I'd love to. The small dance floor was sparsely populated. Lucas led Claire to a spot near the edge and took her in his arms. It had been years since he danced with anyone, but his body remembered the steps. Claire followed his lead gracefully, her hand warm in his. You're full of surprises, just Lucas, she murmured as they moved to the music. First vinyl records, now dancing. What other hidden talents are you concealing? Not many, he replied with a small smile. I make a decent omelet and can recite the periodic table from memory, but that's about it. Claire laughed, the sound blending perfectly with the music. The periodic table. Now that's an unusual party trick. I was an unusual child, Lucas admitted. As they danced, Lucas became acutely aware of Claire's presence, the light floral scent of her perfume, the way her hand felt in his, the warmth of her body so close to his. When the song ended, they remained standing close together for a moment longer than necessary. Thank you for the dance, Claire said softly. Thank you for today, Lucas replied. I can't remember the last time I enjoyed myself this much. The cruise has barely started, Claire reminded him. There's plenty more enjoying to be done. They returned to their table for one more drink before the band concluded their set. As they walked back toward their staterooms, Lucas felt a sense of contentment he hadn't experienced in years. This is me, Claire said, stopping outside her door. Stateroom 714 as advertised. Lucas nodded, suddenly unsure of the proper protocol. Was he supposed to kiss her goodnight, shake her hand, simply walk away? Claire solved his dilemma by rising on her tiptoes and pressing a light kiss to his cheek. Good night, just Lucas, see you tomorrow. Absolutely, he replied, feeling his cheek tingle where her lips had touched it. Good night, Claire. As he walked back to his suite, Lucas realized he was smiling. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about work or responsibilities or the countless problems waiting for him back home. He was simply looking forward to tomorrow. The next several days passed in a blur of shared experiences. Lucas and Claire explored the ship together, trying activities Lucas would never have considered on his own: a cooking class where they learned to make authentic Italian pasta, a ballroom dancing lesson that left them both laughing at their missteps, a stargazing session on the top deck guided by an onboard astronomer. Each day, Lucas found himself opening up more, sharing stories from his childhood, his college years, his early career struggles. He carefully avoided mentioning Osborne Connect by name or the true scale of his success, but otherwise found himself being more honest with Claire than he'd been with anyone in years. For her part, Claire was a delightful companion, intelligent, curious, and refreshingly direct. She had a way of cutting through his defenses with well-placed questions and observations that made him think about his life in new ways. You ever feel like you've lost sight of why you started your company in the first place? She asked one afternoon as they lounged by one of the adults-only pools, relatively secluded from other passengers. Lucas considered the question. Sometimes, when I'm dealing with shareholders and legal issues instead of creating new products or solving problems. Yes. I feel very far from that 22-year-old who just wanted to build something useful. What would he think of you now? Lucas laughed humorlessly. He'd probably be impressed by the success but disappointed by other aspects. Like what? Like the fact that I haven't taken a real vacation in 5 years, that I've missed weddings, funerals, birthdays because of work, that I've become the kind of person who checks his email before saying good morning to another human being. Claire nodded thoughtfully. It's hard to maintain perspective when you're in the middle of building something important, but it's never too late to recalibrate. Is that what you're doing on this cruise? Recalibrating? In a way, Claire admitted. My editor wants me to take over as the magazine's travel editor. It would mean less traveling, more managing other writers, a regular office, regular hours. And you're not sure you want that, Lucas guessed. I'm not sure I'm ready to give up the freedom I've worked so hard for, Claire corrected. But I'm 32. At some point, I need to think about building something more permanent than a collection of passport stamps. Lucas understood her dilemma all too well. It's the eternal question, isn't it? Security versus freedom, stability versus adventure. Exactly. Claire sighed, turning her face toward the sun. What about you? What are you going to do differently when you return to your tech empire? It was a question Lucas had been asking himself more frequently as the cruise progressed. I'm not sure yet, but something needs to change. This past week has reminded me that there's more to life than quarterly reports and product launches. Claire smiled at him, her eyes warm. Well, whatever you decide, I hope it makes you happy, just Lucas. You deserve that. That evening, as they watched the sunset from the ship's bow, Lucas found himself standing closer to Claire than strictly necessary. When she shivered slightly in the evening breeze, he wrapped his arm around her shoulders without thinking. She leaned into him, fitting perfectly against his side. This is nice, she murmured, her eyes on the horizon where the sun was sinking into the sea in a blaze of orange and gold. Yes, Lucas agreed, though he wasn't looking at the sunset, he was looking at her. Claire, there you are, a voice interrupted them. They turned to see a man approaching, camera in hand. Claire Sullivan, right? I'm from Cruise Monthly magazine. Your editor mentioned you'd be on board doing a feature. I'd love to get a few photos of you for our writers at C Column. Claire stiffened slightly beside him. I'm actually off duty at the moment, she said politely but firmly. It would just take a minute, the man persisted. Maybe a few quotes about your experience so far. Lucas felt his protective instincts rise. The lady said she's off duty, he said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used in board meetings. The man looked from Claire to Lucas, then back again. Wait, aren't you Lucas Osborne from Osborne Connect? And just like that, the moment was shattered. Lucas felt Claire turn to look at him, but he couldn't meet her eyes. Sorry to bother you both, the photographer said, backing away. Enjoy your evening. When he was gone, Claire stepped away from Lucas, creating distance between them. Lucas Osborne, she said slowly. As in the Lucas Osborne. Billionaire tech mogul, youngest person ever on the Forbes 400 list, inventor of the Osborne Connect platform that basically revolutionized how businesses handle data security. Lucas finally met her gaze. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have made a difference? Claire looked genuinely confused. Of course not, but why keep it a secret? Did you think I would treat you differently if I knew? Most people do, Lucas said simply. They either want something from me, or they're intimidated by me, or they make assumptions about who I am based on my bank account. And you thought I would do that. I didn't know, and I was enjoying just being. Lucas. Not Lucas Osborne, CEO of Osborne Connect, Billionaire, whatever other labels people want to attach to me. Claire was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. I understand wanting privacy, she said finally, but relationships, even friendships, need to be built on honesty. The word relationships hung in the air between them. Lucas felt a surge of hope. You're right. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. Claire sighed, then offered a small smile. Well, at least now I understand why you jumped every time someone looked at you too long. Does this change things between us? Lucas asked, unable to keep the vulnerability from his voice. Claire considered the question. I'm not sure. I need some time to think. This is a lot to process. Lucas nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. I understand. Let's meet for breakfast tomorrow, Claire suggested. Our usual spot. We can talk more then. I'd like that, Lucas agreed. Claire hesitated, then leaned in to kiss his cheek as she had done each night. Good night, Lucas Osborne. Good night, Claire. Lucas barely slept that night, replaying their conversation and wondering if he'd ruined whatever had been developing between them. By morning, he was a mess of anxiety and caffeine, arriving at their usual breakfast spot 20 minutes early. Claire appeared precisely at their agreed time, looking slightly tired but composed. She sat across from him, accepting the cup of coffee he'd already ordered for her. "I couldn't sleep last night," she admitted. "Neither could I," Lucas confessed. "Claire, I want you to know that everything else I told you was true. My childhood, my interests, my feelings about my work, all of it was real." "I believe you," Claire said after a moment. "And I understand why you might want to keep your identity private, especially on vacation." She took a sip of her coffee. "But I need to know if this whatever is happening between us is just a cruise fling for you or something more." Lucas didn't hesitate. "It's something more, at least it could be if you want it to be." Claire studied him. "My life is complicated, Lucas. I travel constantly. I live out of suitcases more often than not. I'm rarely in one place for more than a few weeks at a time." "My life is complicated too," Lucas replied. "I run a global company with offices in 12 countries. I have responsibilities to thousands of employees and millions of users. So logistically, it's a nightmare," Claire summarized. "Completely impractical," Lucas agreed. They looked at each other for a long moment, then both broke into smiles. "But," Claire prompted. "But I've never felt this way about anyone," Lucas admitted. "And I think it would be a mistake to let logistics get in the way of whatever this could become." Claire reached across the table to take his hand. "I agree. I don't know how we make this work, but I'd like to try." Relief washed over Lucas. So would I. The remaining days of the cruise took on a dreamlike quality. With the truth out in the open, Lucas felt even more connected to Claire. They talked about their lives, their dreams, their fears. They discussed the practical challenges they would face her travel schedule, his demanding work life, but also the possibilities for building something meaningful despite those obstacles. On their last night at sea, Lucas arranged a private dinner on his suite's balcony. The staff set up a table with white linens, fine china, and candles. A personal chef prepared a 7-course meal featuring favorites they discovered together during their journey. Claire arrived wearing a simple black dress that took Lucas's breath away. "This is incredible," she said, taking in the romantic setup. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble." "I wanted tonight to be special," Lucas replied, pulling out her chair. "Our last night on the ship deserves to be memorable." As they enjoyed their meal, they reminisced about the past 2 weeks, the wine tasting where they'd first connected, the dance in the Starlight Lounge, the cooking class where Lucas had accidentally set his pasta on fire. "I never expected this," Lucas admitted as they finished their dessert, a delicate tiramisu that reminded them of their day in Sicily. "When I boarded this ship, I was just looking for escape, for silence, for a break from being Lucas Osborne. And instead you found me," Claire said with a smile. "Possibly the nosiest passenger on the entire cruise." "The most intriguing passenger," Lucas corrected. "The most genuine person I've met in years." Claire reached across the table to take his hand. "What happens tomorrow, Lucas, when the ship docks and we return to our real lives?" Lucas had been thinking about this question extensively. "That depends on you. I know you have assignments scheduled, places to be. I don't want to interfere with your work." "And you have a company to run," Claire added. "I do, but I've been thinking about what you said about recalibrating." Lucas squeezed her hand. "I've made some decisions. I'm promoting my COO to co-CEO. I'm delegating more responsibility to my executive team, and I'm committing to actually taking weekends off and using my vacation days." Claire looked impressed. "That's a significant change." "It's a necessary one. This cruise has reminded me that there's more to life than work. I don't want to be that person who checks email before saying good morning anymore." He took a deep breath. "Claire, I know we've only known each other for 2 weeks, but I feel like I've been waiting for you my entire life. I don't want this to end when we dock." "Neither do I," Claire admitted. "But my next assignment is in Japan. I leave in 3 days." Lucas nodded. "I know, and after that you have Australia, then Peru." Claire raised an eyebrow. "You've been researching my schedule." "I may have looked up your bylines and publication calendar," Lucas admitted with a sheepish smile. I wanted to understand what I was getting into. And I think we can make it work. I have offices in Tokyo and Sydney. I can work remotely while you're on assignment. We can meet in the middle when our schedules allow. It won't be easy, but… He met her eyes. You're worth the effort. Claire's eyes glistened with unshed tears. That's the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me. I'm just getting started, Lucas promised. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. This isn't what you think, he said quickly, seeing her expression. It's way too soon for that, but I wanted you to have something to remember this cruise by. Claire opened the box to find a delicate silver compass pendant on a chain. It's beautiful, she whispered. I had it engraved, Lucas said. Claire turned the compass over to find the coordinates of the spot where they had first danced together in the Starlight Lounge. Below the numbers were the words where it began. Lucas, Claire breathed, clearly touched. No matter where your travels take you, I hope this reminds you that you always have a direction home, Lucas said softly. To me. Claire stood and moved around the table, sitting on his lap and wrapping her arms around his neck. I love it, and I think I might be falling in love with you too. Lucas held her close, marveling at how his life had changed in just 2 weeks. I know I'm falling in love with you, Claire Sullivan. Their kiss was sweet and full of promise, not an ending but a beginning. 6 months later, Lucas stood in the arrivals area of San Francisco International Airport, scanning the crowd for a familiar face. When he spotted Claire, his heart leapt in his chest. She ran to him, dropping her carry-on to throw herself into his arms. Welcome home, he murmured into her hair. 2 whole weeks this time, Claire replied, pulling back to look at him. No assignments, no deadlines, just us. Lucas kissed her, not caring who might be watching. I have something to show you, he said when they broke apart. A surprise. At his penthouse apartment, Lucas led Claire to his home office. On the wall hung a large world map with dozens of pins marking different locations. What's this? Claire asked. These red pins are places you've been for work since we met, Lucas explained. The blue pins are places I've traveled for business, and these gold pins. He pointed to several points on the map. These are the places we've managed to meet up over the past 6 months. Claire studied the map. Tokyo, Sydney, London, New York, Paris, each gold pin representing a few precious days they'd carved out of their busy lives to be together. It's not a conventional relationship, Lucas continued, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. Mine too, Claire agreed, leaning back against his chest as he wrapped his arms around her from behind. I have one more surprise, Lucas said. He reached past her to place a new gold pin in a location they hadn't visited together, yet a small island in the Maldives. What's that? Claire asked. Lucas took a deep breath. I've rented a private island for 2 weeks next month. My new co-CEO can handle things at Osborne Connect. I was hoping you might take a break from your travel writing to join me. Claire turned in his arms. Is this a vacation or something more? Lucas dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. This time, it was exactly what she thought. Claire Sullivan, you changed my life when you refused to let me hide on that cruise. You reminded me of what's truly important. I love you more than I thought possible, and I want to spend the rest of my life exploring the world with you, whether that's distant countries or just the space between us. He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. Will you marry me? Claire's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. Yes, Lucas Osborne. Absolutely yes. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Lucas reflected on how differently his life had turned out than he'd expected. He'd boarded that cruise seeking escape and solitude. Instead, he'd found love with a woman who challenged him, inspired him, and accepted him completely, billions and all. I never expected to find you, he whispered as he stood to kiss his fiancée. The best journeys are the ones you don't plan, Claire replied, quoting something she'd written in one of her travel articles. They lead you exactly where you need to go. And Lucas knew, as he held the woman he loved, that he had finally arrived exactly where he belonged.